But I'm really excited for this presentation just because we just did that resume review, and so now you can learn how to put that and some other skills that we learned today to good use to finding jobs and internships and things like that. So we're going to start off with a couple announcements, but then we have a very special guest from the Career Center who's joining us today, and so then we'll pass it off to her. So first of all, I just wanted to, okay, if you're not already connected with us on social media, please do. Our Discord is where mainly everything is at. So if you're not in our Discord channel, it's really easy to join us. There's one link on here that you should probably be joining. So I see some familiar faces, so I think everybody's on the Discord. A few announcements is if you're not registered as a member, please go ahead and do so. Membership is completely free, and we do it by a merit-based system. So if you attend 7 meetings this semester, you will get our ACM t-shirt, and you'll also receive an invitation to our spring banquet. And this outlines what the criteria is for the t-shirt. So you just attend 7 meetings, RowdyHacks meetings count for bi-weekly, but any other ACM event counts for 1 point. And including today, there's a total of 3 points that you can get this week. So if you're only at 4 meetings, no worries, just come to every meeting. And a quick reminder for next semester, our meeting times will be Wednesdays from 12 to 1 a.m. So after picking your schedules, please try to keep that in mind. We will also offer the hybrid option of the stream. And then, so if you were at our study hall, the last meeting, we talked about Battle of the Brains, which is a competition between people from business, science, engineering, and the computer science department is working with the computer science, or the College of Sciences Student Success Center to send a bunch of people to Austin to form a team. So if you're interested, this is kind of like a hackathon type competition, and we would love to have some computer scientists from ACM represent. So this QR code is a flyer to kind of learn more. But please, if you're interested in Battle of the Brains and you want more information, go ahead and DM me on Discord and we'll get you connected because it's a great opportunity. It's a contest. It will be fully paid for. So it's definitely something great to add to your resume. And I believe we're looking for 2 computer scientists. So again, if you're interested, DM me on Discord. So our upcoming events is tomorrow, ACM-W has a holiday social. We will be doing holiday activities and also wrapping gifts for our Adopt a Family program. So if you haven't donated to the Adopt a Family program, you can find that link in our Discord. And that's if you can meet in attendance, and you can go tomorrow and you can wrap those gifts, or you can just hang out, drink some hot chocolate, watch some holiday cartoons, and that will also be the meeting. That's going to be tomorrow from 3 to 5 p.m. in January. And again, this is our Adopt a Family program. You can find more information about this in the Discord, but basically we are sponsoring family as an organization. So we're getting them gifts for the holiday season. And it's a lot of necessities and things they need. So if you can, please donate. But if you can't donate financially, a great opportunity is tomorrow to come and wrap those gifts and donate your time. All right, and here's the sign in for today's meeting. So make sure you sign in. And this will also be at the end of the meeting for anybody who missed it. I'll leave that for a few more seconds. And then, like I said, it'll be shown at the end. Or you can go to acmutsa.org/sign-in/ACM. And without further ado, I would like like to introduce Sara Goede from the UTSA Career Center to talk to us about finding a job in the computer science industry. So let's go ahead and give it up to Sara.
Glad to be here. Everyone can hear me okay? Awesome. Okay. So today we're going to talk a little bit about all the areas to hit when you're thinking about pursuing an internship or even a full-time job. How many do any freshmen in here? Okay. Sophomore? Junior? Seniors? Okay, good. So different timelines. Some of us may be taking internships, some of us are thinking about this job. So I'll be mindful to target those areas. But all things considered, these are going to hit on the same places no matter where you are in that journey. So we're going to hit on, and I do apologize if some of these topics I rushed through because we're covering a lot, but you will have a copy of this presentation, so you get these resources too. And so with that said, we'll hit on things to consider, how to stay organized. We'll touch on resumes, and you already tackled that as well, but just as a reminder, we cover letters as well, interviewing, and then resources available to you, as well as some other considerations in that. Okay, so that's okay, so getting organized, these are just some things you're like, okay, well, what do I think about during this process? So you definitely want to stay organized and be prepared, network, and then definitely using all your resources available. So you want to inventory all these areas when you are getting to start your either entry-level search or your internship search. And so we'll discuss those too. So your to-do list. These would be some things. We've already talked about resumes, you're familiar with that process and how to tailor that document. But then also an elevator pitch. And I think that's important not only when you're meeting new professionals and engaging, but it's also good to target an elevator pitch because, like, for example, if you're in an interview, what's one of the first questions you get asked? Tell me about yourself. So that could certainly be an area to consider in answering that question too. So that's always the hardest interview, or one of the hardest interview questions, because it's the first one, it's that normal question, but it's then thinking about, well, what do I hit on with this question? Or so then another thing to consider is you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So creating like a document of where you've applied, what the job title is, also considering the company, of course, and then the documents you submitted and what you tailored. But another thing that you might want to do is take like either a screenshot of that position, not just rely on the link, because sometimes when you go back to the job description, it may be inactive at the time you have your interview. And you do need that job description to really study for the interview, if you will, or have that aligned with some of the documents that you're submitting in the application. So being strategic and organized is really helpful, as well as interview practice. You have some resources available to you that can help you with that, which I'll share later. And then anyone have a LinkedIn profile in here? Good. Okay, so for those of you who don't, that's okay. It's something that the Career Center can help you create. But yes, it's LinkedIn, something where you create a professional profile, where your interests are, where the audiences you want to speak to. But then it also serves as a great research tool for those of you who may not be using it for that. If you interview with a company, look at that company, you can see all its employees and kind of gather a feel for their company culture based on the department you're interviewing for, or what they're all about in terms of the experiences they have from their employees, or anything they're saying about themselves from their website, or anything else that you found in research about them, awards, things like that. That's going to resonate really well in an interview when you're talking about your interests with that company with multiple inputs, like promise. So those are some things to kind of consider in getting organized and prepared. So resume, I'll probably breeze through this a little bit just because I understand you guys just talked about this. But again, really the resume's intent is it here's everything I've done. It's more so here's what I've done that relates to this internship posting, that relates to this full-time job posting. So there's going to be changes, but it's not a complete overhaul each resume. It's going to be some minor edits, especially if you're staying in the same field. But obviously, if you're going to two different opposite fields, more changes would be necessary. Good news is, it's minor changes, but you do want to make those changes because if they use an applicant tracking system, or even if it's just a human reviewing your document, there are programs to align those areas that are in the job description. So that's something to consider as well. And so look at the resume as like that stepping stone. Resume gets you the interview, interview gets you the job. So if you kind of sequentially think about the hiring process that way, it can help you kind of focus on one thing at a time. So that's something to consider as well. And each resume is going to be different because everyone brings to the table different experiences, different interests, different skill sets. So that's where, like, if you were to Google a resume template, that's where you see so many different ones because resumes are highly individualized. So things you really just want to hit on in that, just as some reminders, are employers will look at this for about 10 seconds, and I don't mean that to add extra stress. I say that because it puts things into perspective about how intentional you need to be about what is in your resume, as well as how organized and consistent it is and direct. So that way the employer can see right out of the gate, okay, this person aligns with the qualifications. I'm interested to interview this candidate. So those are some things to consider as well. Aligning some things that I think of when I look at a job description, or you know how there's like minimum and preferred qualifications. Those are some good guiding points for maybe if you are choosing to do a summary of qualifications, or just ordering of your categories. What are they hitting on in that posting, and how can you cater to that in your document? Because that's going to interest them to want to learn more in your interview. So those are some things to consider in terms of like where things are on the job posting and how to align that in the resume. But also, like if you're looking at job duties, maybe some of the things you've done in class or in this organization or in a job or an internship. Maybe there are some alignment points. Maybe it's not the same exact job duty you'd be doing in that internship or job, but maybe there's a process that's similar. That could be a helpful guiding point in the experience bullet point. So that's kind of an area to consider when we're reviewing the posting as well. Like how to be intentional about that tailoring. So really factoring in quantifiable, results-focused information, action-oriented, carefree statements. Those are some things to consider as well. And so this slide is more for when you guys have a copy of this presentation, just to see how, if you're like me and end up using the same word over and over and over again, at least this provides about variety. So if you're looking at a job posting, inventory the key skills that they're looking for. Leadership, research, communication. What action words then reflect that inventory that you've made with key skills for the job? So that allows you to create a variety of action-focused statements in your resume. And so we do have a software that is available to you. Has anyone used VMOCK in here? Good. So for those of you who aren't familiar, VMOCK can help you jumpstart the process in understanding resume formatting. It is a resource listed on the Career Center website. And so what you do is you have up to 10 uploads where you can upload a resume, and then you get immediate feedback. It works off AI, so it's not like someone sitting there looking at your resume at 12 a.m. But it's an opportunity if you are up at 12 a.m. and want your resume reviewed, you can submit that and use that software to get that instant feedback. You do have the option too to schedule an appointment with your career consultant, who is Lisa Vico. I'd like to introduce her in the beginning. Sorry, I'm just so excited to jumpstart the process here. But Lisa Vico is your career consultant, and she is the person you'd be meeting with for any type of career plan as well. So we do have individualized appointments for resumes and drop-ins, but again, we'll see those further on in the presentation. But VMOCK is a software that is available to you for instant resume feedback. Cover letters, really, it's just the package with the resume. If it's required, obviously no room around that. But if it's an option, it's probably still in your best interest to create one, because now, since this is a full sentence document, And it allows you, because resume is more selective and more factual, whereas the cover letter can allow you to position yourself on how you feel based on your experiences you're qualified for that internship or qualified for that full-time position. So the cover letter is actually to your advantage versus someone who may not submit one if it's an option, because it allows the hiring manager to see, oh yeah, I really see that connection and interest. This is where company information can be aligned to, like if you're reading their mission, vision, values. It's not just a matter of copying and pasting that back to them, they know that. But how does that align to your interests, not only in the position, but also being part of that company? So those are some things to consider when you're creating a cover letter. So when it comes to job searching, what are some of the things that you guys think about? What some challenges are when you're encountering, if some of you started searching? What are some things that have been challenging in the process? If anyone has mentioned. Yeah. Deadlines, like, okay, this post is due tomorrow, and then there's 7 tests you have to study for. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
I guess it's like,
Volunteers. You're like, wait a second. Yeah, and good news about that is you can kind of formulate, because entry level, we all start somewhere, right? So it's not a matter of, does this candidate have to be in this type of field for X amount of years? At the entry level, it's more kind of like taking from one place, taking from another place, and adding up to that maybe year experience they want, and reflecting how those skill sets have been developed. So it comes from different places, but it would just need to be reflected in that timeline onto the resume. So yeah, I get how that's like, well, hey, this doesn't make sense, but areas from the curriculum, other jobs, even jobs that aren't related to your career goals, it's the skill set that matters. So if some of you maybe work either retail, restaurant, or a job that doesn't align with where you want to go, it's the skill set that you can emulate in the statement. So that's a way to think about that too. Any other challenges or encounters in this appraisal that you'd like to share? Yeah? Yeah, you could have the perfect resume. It's that one little design that goes off the tracking system. So that just is a reminder that in some fields, like there are more creative spaces for resumes, like architecture and artistic marketing, you have a little more kind of artistic details on the resume, but pretty much other than that, it's too straightforward and kind of more so you want your qualifications to take the feature, not so much a visually appealing document. But things like that. Anyone else? Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. It's because sometimes we think we have to align with every little bullet point on the job. Well, obviously, there's some non-negotiables, like minimum must have a year experience in this. And again, if it's a professional experience, that might be a full-time job. If it doesn't say that, it says like vaguely experience, you can do like what I said earlier, kind of add it up to that. But yeah, as long as those kind of, so the rule of thumb would be like say, hey, what would I say in the interview? So I'll put this on my resume for this experience, this is factual, but like how would I describe that if I was asked? And so that's a good way to kind of keep it in mind. So like, what if I have an explanation for it? I feel confident in saying that later on. Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, we want to direct you, or some keywords, kind of like the norm and stick out as far
information, so I don't know what makes things different. So how I would do that then would be like, so when you're reading the job description and you know like what is it to essentially be successful in this position and how do you bring that to the table? Sometimes too it can be a matter of like let's say they want a certain amount of experience and like that's kind of an area of growth for me. Well, when you think about your areas of growth, try to think about how can that actually be described as a strength. Well, although I may not have this experience, but here's what I bring to the table, like those kind of things. But when it's like those describe yourself in 3 words, and who would you go to dinner with, or those kind of things, just always kind of frame it either on the job description or mission, vision, values, anything that aligns. Like if they're like, you're an animal, what would you be? And think of an animal that's highly collaborative, because if that's a key part of the job, then there you go. So yeah, you kind of have to get creative or on the spot, but I totally get it. Yeah. So just any 3 that you think you bring to the table that aligns with what you've done or what you've seen in the job. And maybe some areas on your resume can help provide some insight too. Because the thing is if you're there for an interview, they like what they've seen on your documents you submitted, right? So use that as a form of confidence. So those would be some, it just kind of proves the point of studying and answering some of the interview questions and kind of coming up with those creative questions and answers and what you would say based on what you know about that position. Does that help? Does that help? Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I was turning. But for sake of time, I could definitely talk about this all day. But one of the things that a lot of students tell me too is like keywords when you're searching. I apologize if this is so small, but again, you'll get a copy. So this intention is to help you when you're searching for jobs, because I get it. Sometimes when you put computer science in your field, you probably will find a lot of opportunities. But if you want to do a deeper dive and be more catered to the type of occupation you're looking for, these could be some job titles you put if you're using the job search engine like Indeed or anything like that. So this is where I would gather from the software that we have internally in our office based on some traditional job titles in the state of Texas for computer science majors. So these were some of the top ones that populated. So this is going to help you be more intentional. If you want a certain area of computer science, at least you can put that specific occupation in rather than just putting your major and kind of seeing what's out there, because this will help you get more targeted results in the postings. And you can be kind of strategic. If something says manager and you're like, not there yet, then you can put like specialist or assistant or coordinator, or even if you're looking for an internship, you put intern instead of the more kind of seasoned role that's tagged to it, if you find that. So that can be helpful in your search strategy, as well as looking for employers. We all know employers really have the discretion of putting together any job title. So with that said, the other part of your job search strategy should be looking at employers and then seeing what positions that they have available in the entry level. So kind of twofold. First part of your search is like keyword occupational search, and then the other side of the coin is looking at the employer and then seeing what type of jobs they have, so you don't miss out on something you might not have thought to search keyword-wise. Does that make sense? Yes, okay. So again, you'll have access to this to see maybe some companies you might be interested in based on
Sounds having issues.
and so we have tailoring for the job description. I already kind of mentioned the strategy there of looking at minimum and preferred qualifications and how you can align some of your volume, your experiences. It's not necessarily just listing who's really good, who's really good, who's really good. Take a step further and say, here's what I've done as it relates to some of the job duties in that position and the requirements that they're looking for. That way it helps you stay at that kind of 1-page mark without getting too many pages involved in your resume, because you're very intentional about what you're putting on there. And it helps the employers see the outcomes relevant to the job. So just as a reminder, some job searching resources would be Indeed. Professional organizations also have some job boards as well. Sometimes you do have to be a member. Sometimes they have student membership fees that are arbitrary, but then sometimes you don't have to be a member to use their job board. We have Handshake as well. So I guess a feature of Handshake would be if it's a smaller pool of candidates than LinkedIn or than Indeed, because the employer has specifically posted in Handshake because they want college level students or recent graduates. So that might be a reason why you use multiple resources in research because of those areas. On company websites too, if you want to work for a certain industry like government, use the jobs.gov. So again, using multiple, you don't have to use every job resource, but what are your interests and how can you use a couple of those to make sure you're finding all the opportunities you are going to job search. So then, that kind of leads us to the conversation about networking. Because one, networking can be helpful when you have some connections, or if you are on LinkedIn and see you have some first degree connections, that's awesome. Second degree connections can also be great too, because that means you know someone who knows the person you talk to. So using that to your advantage to get some referrals and starting those networking conversations is a good idea, as well as just even when you're in an interview too. You want that personable quality, you want to be intentional about what you're sharing, but you also want your personality to show too, because they're also saying like, hey, is this candidate going to be a good fit in the department that we have? So thinking of networking, think about your elevator pitch, LinkedIn, like we've been talking about. And so what to hit on with your elevator pitch would be just a couple things. First, you want to inventory like where your strengths are. What are your interests? What are your career goals? Those are some talking points to consider. And I say talking points intentionally, since by no means is an elevator pitch a memorized version. It's only like 60 to 90 seconds long, and really just factoring in talking points, acknowledging that it can sound different each time, but you're hitting on the talking points is going to help you sound more genuine than the first. So doing your research about the company is going to build you even more confidence in this answer, because you'll know what they stand for, you'll know what information, there's so many things about you that once you research that, you'll be able to align that information to their needs. So that's something to consider as well. As well as thinking about ways to engage with them. I think that's important if you're going to like a mixer or a networking event. I have a slide with some questions too, so you can take those with you just to have an idea when you are networking. Maybe you're more social with other professionals or career fairs. But being engaged and showing interest or showing career goals. So those are some things to consider when you're factoring in.
They're saying, tell me about yourself, following the thread of, okay, education, like you know that, like the back of your hand, you know, because you're in it, you're in the thick of it. So education, experience, and so if some of you have had an internship or when you have an internship, that's probably going to be the closest aligned experience. But then talking about other experiences that are skills aligned or topic aligned, like a project or something to that effect. So those could be ways to share your experiences. And then ending that answer with areas of like your career goals or what motivates you and anything that you're excited about in that position. That's a good way to close out that type of question if you get asked that in an interview. So this is just a reminder of marketable skills. Yes, a lot of you have tech knowledge that's way above my head. And that's definitely great to share with employers and align in documents. But it's also important, like I was saying earlier, for those that personality to show and those marketable skills, because you're going to be working on a team for the most part, or will at some point. And so employers are also looking for that balance of marketable skills. So it's technical skills and marketable skills as well. So these are some areas to consider in addition to your technical skills on your resume or what you're saying in an interview, to also factor in these items of how you've collaborated well or how you communicate well or written communication too. All these buckets you can tap into in addition to your tech skills. And so just a little fun activity. I have a elevator pitch, and I'm just curious to see if once you read this, does anyone have a guess of whose elevator pitch this might be? No, it's a celebrity, but thank you. I'm very flattered. I wish I had my PhD in neuroscience, but anyone? Yes, you win the grand prize of a pen. Yes, it's Mayim Bialik. So yeah, again, that's not like her official posting of an elevator pitch. I just did some research on her and created the concepts, but you all get the idea. So it's really just an introduction of yourself, where your experiences and interests are, and then that engagement piece. So with that said too, this is more kind of like that other list I had earlier with all the words. This is more so just to keep on hand, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel and think about engagement questions. At least these are some good professional questions to ask. Maybe if you're at a professional engagement event, these would be some great ones to ask. This could also be maybe some of these questions to ask at the end of an interview, so something to consider as well. And then it's also important to know, like, okay, so she keeps saying networking, but who can I network with? Faculty, because if some of you maybe need a reference, or if you're planning to go to graduate school, you want to make sure you have those connections with your faculty. So that's something to consider as well. Family, friends. I remember one time I was working with a student and he wanted to be a lawyer, and we were trying to think of networking, and we were designing like a network web. And he was like, oh yeah, my dad's friends with that prominent lawyer in town. And I was like, hey, that's a good person to have as a reference. So it's just some of those things that we don't really think about until we're discussing with someone else or brainstorming. So just thought it was intentional and good to put kind of the idea of who you can network with, because you don't know who knows who. So it could be to your advantage, because referrals really help bring a good return on your investment by getting some job opportunities. So something to consider. And then following up is important. So I saw this article many moons ago about the formula 24/7/30. So when you meet someone within 24 hours, send them a thank you. Like if you're going to a career fair, thank them for the time that they spent talking with you. You're looking forward to hearing more about opportunities. Within 7 days, make sure you're connecting with them on professional social media, like LinkedIn, or following that company on other areas of social media too, just to become aware of maybe openings or events that that company has. And then 30 days would be like touching base. If there was some item that you needed to touch base on, maybe an internship posting that's going to happen in the summer and you talked to them a few semesters ago, that could be something to consider as well. So keep that in mind. When you are thinking about LinkedIn, I know some of you mentioned you had an account, but you want to make sure there's that professional online presence. Like in your summary, are you speaking to the audiences that you want to speak to? Are you hitting on your experiences? Are you talking about your career goals or what you aspire to do? Those are some talking points, so to speak, in that summary portion. Make connections with classmates. Like now's the time to build those connections, because in the future, you know, maybe you have your entry-level job for a few years and come to find out a former classmates at your dream job that you want to apply to that next level position. It's a great way to connect with them, reconnect. And so it's important to connect now and invest in that, but also with other professionals, like maybe other employers that you've spoke to, or faculty members, things of that nature. So, and researching companies, we already talked about that. And then a good way to practice professional networking etiquette, or just keep an inventory of all the connections you've had. It's nice to have one place of people you've connected with. And then we also have a resource that you'll see later on with Roadrunner Network, which kind of the same thing in terms of a smaller pool. Roadrunner Network is available to you to connect with other alumni in your field and maybe jobs that they've had, because you have that relatability factor of both being a UTSA student at some point. So that's a great tool to use to get that mentorship, to ask questions about experiences and suggestions in your field from those who've been experienced for a little bit in it through other alumni you can connect with at UTSA. So that's Roadrunner Network. You'll see that in a second. So I already talked about in terms of just that professionalism, targeting keywords, making sure like recommendations could be a great place to inquire with maybe other faculty you have strong connections with or other supervisors from internships, things to consider there. Now with interviewing, that is kind of areas to consider here because that's that final step. So you definitely want to be prepared in this arena for sure. So researching, we talked about that, but hey, if you've already done that for when you were aligning your documents, it should just become more knowledge you've acquired about that company through studying again for your interview. Knowing there's different types of interviews, dress and appearance, questions that you would want to answer accordingly, as well as ask at the end of the interview, and that follow-up and closing. So briefly, I'll just go through these interviewing areas. So now we're in a world, and it happened before the pandemic, but more so than ever, doing virtual interviewing. So just some things to consider about that would be, as you all probably know and don't need to be told, but you have your tech all ready to go and updated and no issues when you're preparing for your interview. So make sure to do that like a day in advance just so you don't have any surprises, but I don't feel like I have to tell this group that. So another thing to consider would be like your attire. Attire would still matter and the background would still matter. So appropriate filter, appropriate background, again, appropriate dress. We'll have some visuals coming up here in a second, but that's something to consider. There could be multiple rounds of interviewing. So it might be a 30-minute interview virtually, but then an in-person interview for like an hour or something along those lines, or a whole day. Something could be that effect. But something that's probably very applicable to your field would be like a hands-on assignment as part of the interview. Like they may give you a task to perform if a certain computer software or something is highly applicable to the position you're going to be doing. They may ask you to do a task to do that performance as part of the interview. So that's something to be prepared of too. You might get insight on the structure of your interview when that's getting scheduled, but you can certainly ask. It doesn't hurt to ask, you know, you won't get to have the questions typically, but you could ask like, what is the schedule for the interview? And then they probably will include that you'll have a task to do, but you could also ask as well. And so attire matters, business professional, it's that first impression that you're giving. So even if you're virtual, again, I'd say dress the part because in case you have to get up and you're in your pajama bottoms, it's not a good look. So again, you're going to feel confident if you're fully dressed the part, even if it's virtual. But in person, suggest is business professional. And that's where you see the suits. Even if you're not going to wear that on the job, it shows that you find this interview important. It shows that you'll make a good first impression. So it's just that extra touch that you want in your corner. You want that good impression. So keep that in mind. Business casual is more like everyday workwear. So this would be an example of a follow-up thank you letter. So again, you guys will have this so you can cater this language as it fits. But this is just a general idea of thanking them for their time, maybe something that stood out in the interview, and then reiteration of interest in that position. So that's something to keep in mind. And just like we had VMOCK for practicing for resume formatting, we have Interview Stream to help practice for interviewing. And it's a one-way kind of interview prep where you record yourself, but you get feedback, automated feedback too. So it's a good way to kind of say those answers out loud and get that practice. You also have the option of scheduling a mock interview with your career consultant. And that's where you would put like maybe what you want to prep for an interview in the appointment request. And the career consultant then gets to design questions based on your areas that you've mentioned of interest, or maybe the company, so they know what to listen for when you're practicing your interview. So that's another option you have to prepare. So these are listed on our resources page, like I was saying, where you find VMOCK, where you find interview streams. So this is a Roadrunner network as well. So this is on our website where you have access to all these virtual resources. And Handshake is our platform, for those of you who don't know, to look for jobs or internships, but it's also where you schedule an appointment. But it's also a place where you can see of different events to network and do some of the areas that we just talked about. In the spring, we are planning so far, again, I always say so far, to have a career fair in person. So again, stay tuned because you'll check events and Handshake for those spring dates as well. So that's something where you can see what employers are coming, plan ahead to engage. If there is a virtual component, you can sign up for one-on-one sessions, but if it's in person, you get to talk directly to the recruiter. So something to consider to really build your network in the spring. This is just a visual of how to schedule appointments. Like I was saying, you go to your career profile and Career Center, then select appointments. Then you get to choose a day and time that works best with your schedule and see your career consultant's availability. And we made it. This is the last slide. It's kind of a recap of all our services. We do both virtual and in-person appointments. And then on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we do drop-ins, and that's like a 15 to 20 minute window. So that could be like a resume question or anything that fits in that 15 to 20 minute window. And so from 2 to 4 on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we do them in person in our office, which is located right across from the Retama. And then from 4 to 6, we do them virtual via Zoom, and that Zoom link's on our website as well. So I know I covered a lot. I think we did a tour of the hiring process today. So I want to give enough time. Does anyone have any questions for me? Did I just cover it all? Oh, yes. Sure. Yeah, I would. It's that professional touch that honestly set you apart from everyone else, because I guarantee not everyone's going to think of it. So yeah, just within 24 hours. And it doesn't have to be anything lengthy. It can be just an email. So that's a good point, because at the end of your interview, if you don't have their contact, it's a good time to ask, in addition to other questions, of course, but ask them like their contact information. So then you're ready to go to write that letter for sure. Well, typically, if you have, like, that would be a good question to ask too at the end of the interview, is like, what's the timeline for hiring for this position? So then you can kind of gauge that, especially if you're doing multiple interviews. But then I would say if you forget to ask that question, typically they'll have like a sign in when you apply to a position, and they'll say the status. If you feel like it's too much to ask them, the person, what you could do then, if that login status isn't available, you could call their human resources department and say, I'm inquiring about the status of my application. So you could do that. No. It shows interest for sure. But yeah, you wouldn't want to bombard the hiring manager or anything. So I get that. But yeah, that could be another kind of loophole to consider for sure. Yeah, but I would say first and foremost, just, and when you have questions at the end of your interview, you can write those down and bring those with you. Because I know there's a lot going on in an interview, but having those ready to go is going to be pretty helpful. And so that'll help you be like, oh yeah, I got to ask that question. So, it could be like, let's say you have like one of those portfolios and there's a legal pad in there. You could just jot them down there, print them off, whatever works best for you for sure. Yeah. Anyone else? Do we feel, yes? Sure. Oh, so that's so other than VMOC cutting you off after 3 months in the career closet, you get access as an alum to utilize the Career Center services. So that's a good bonus to use as an alum. We say don't wait until then, because a lot of people don't realize the timeline of the job search process and think, oh, I'll get my degree and it'll take like a week to get that job. No, it can actually take like 3 to 6 months, just depending on what the individual's looking for, how proactive they are in looking, and things like that. But yes, alumni get services for life. Good question. Any other questions? Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I would say, like, if you have certain career goals, I've always heard this from recruiters too, is like when you're in an interview and if that is the stepping stone to the career, don't focus so much on the long-term career. The employer needs to know you'll be capable of doing that job that you're interviewing for. So I would put more emphasis on the internship and the qualities that they're looking for, and then sharing your career goals if asked to that effect, but like still try to align it with the experience that you would get from that internship. Yeah. Oh yeah. That actually looks great on a resume, as long as you stay the whole internship timeline, of course. But multiple internships are great because both you and the hiring manager or the supervisor you'll have know, like, hey, like, we know this is a temporary thing. Sometimes internships do turn into full-time positions, but by no means is it a guarantee. Any other questions? Do we feel somewhat ready for this process? Maybe once you have access to the presentation, because there's a lot of visuals on there. Okay, well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you having me come to share all this journey with you. And again, feel free to use our services. Like I said, in-person virtual appointments. We're located right across from the Retama. Take advantage of these services for sure. So thank you.